Excuse me. Trying to get over a bit of a cold that I caught from my niece and my great nephew, if you will. Let me bounce that out so you guys can see me better. But yeah, I'm trying to get over that. But you know, surprise, surprise, the same fan that talked about the worst heel turns in the comics history, Sonic comics history, has recently reevaluated how he and some other fans look at a certain issue in the comic that took place 122 issues ago this month. For you see, at the end of this month and into next month, we'll be getting issue 256, which is the conclusion to Countdown to Chaos. Thus, the conclusion and climax to the soft retcon that we are currently going through. But you might ask yourself, well, what issue took place 122 issues ago? Or 122 months ago? Well, it's quite simple. The issue was issue 134, which is known infamously for the infamous slap heard around the world, or at least the Sonic world, the Sonic fan base and universe. But basically the infamous slap. Now, this fan, and I'll say who they are, the Vorahk295, they're the same ones that talked about the worst heel turns. But Vorahk, and I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, basically points out something very interesting when you read this journal, this entry he put on it, and I'll provide the link down below. But basically the situation he points out here is, you know, 134, people always look at it very negatively, and they look at it in a sense of saying, it really didn't need to be done this way. Why did call bowlers write it this way? Why did they allow it? Blah, 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 blah. Well, what he points out in this journal is kind of true to form, especially if you look at it from a very realistic standpoint. Let's put it this way. Let's say you're a police officer, or you're a soldier, or something like that, and you're in the line of fire, and while you're in the line of fire, you get hurt very badly, to the point that, well, basically, to the point that you have to be bedridden, you have to be in a hospital, an emergency for quite some time, you have to be here and there, if you will. So, by being putting yourself in the line of fire, and let's say, like I said, getting injured or getting hurt to the point that some people may not know if you're going to make it or not. Especially the one you love, your counterpart, your soul mate, if you will, your life partner. They might not take it too well, and they may not be the kind of person that supports the kind of line of duty work that you're doing. And that's what Vorahk points out here, in a way. See, Sally, her character, basically from this point on and everything, through the writers of Ken Penders and Carl Bowlers and whoever, from a story standpoint, was going through a lot. From a story standpoint, she was going through a lot, basically. Essentially, what happened is post Sonic Adventure adaptation, the King, when he was, as some people looked at him, the ass king, the asshole king, if you will, was bedridden himself, or basically unable of enabled, basically not able to perform his duties. The king, or the substitute king at the time, which was Elizus, through, I guess, Geoffrey St. John's suggestion, or King Max's suggestion or something, had basically ruled that the freedom fighters were no more. And that the freedom fighters had to be treated like they were, basically like teenagers. They had to be treated as young kids, young teenagers, and that now since they lived in this new and improved version of Knothole, thus in a way making it at the time safe, that they should, go back to normalcy. They should go back to their normal lives, in a sense, and thus by doing that, they should go back to school. Well, this is where the whole separation issue started for a while, because basically the way it was written was Sonic and Sally were not going to attend the same school together. And there had been a situation even before that involved them kind of breaking off for a while and stuff. So even though through Carl Bolo's and Ken Pender's writing, that depending on who you favored out of the two, the storyline basically progressed to the point, like from Ken Pender's standpoint, of Sonic and Sally wanting desperately to get back to each other. But they couldn't, because they were separated. And then you add in the situation that Geoffrey St. John was always in Sally's brother's ear and kind of preventing Sonic from getting to her. That was a whole other story in itself. That was a whole other story within the story. So when you take a look at all that culminating together, her getting kidnapped by Knack, finding a way to, being able to escape from Knack herself, and because of all this, she wanted to be with Sonic again. And through all this, even between all this, she wanted to be with Sonic again. And then with the thought and possibility that he was hooking up with Mina, Mina Mongoose, it weighed a lot on her mind. But finally she gets back together with Sonic, and Sonic does, I guess, what Sega probably got pissed off at Ken Penders about doing, and that's he proposed to Sally. He proposed to Sally. Well, in a sense, from a royal situation, he proposed to Sally. He became her consort, basically her husband-to-be. Well then, lo and behold, an issue or so later, he sacrifices himself. Just around the same time they just get engaged and they're back together and blah blah blah. And that leads into the whole situation of Tossed in Space saga, which leads back to the Homecoming Triple Threat saga, which leads right into 134. And you think about it this way. What's presented in the issue where he comes back, in the first issue of Homecoming, he comes back. What's the cover of that issue? What is the cover of the issue he comes back in? It's Sally on her knees in front of what looks like a gravestone. And Sonic's right behind her. And instead, she is always going to the memorial, to the so-called gravesite, thinking he's been gone, he's dead. And all of a sudden, there he is, right behind her. And what does she do to basically cover up the fact that she, like a lot of people, thought he was dead? She basically tells him, no, I always knew you were getting back, you're always going to come back to me. And perhaps part of that is true, but from a realistic standpoint, that's what anybody that goes through that kind of a situation might think. They might want to say, just to cover up how they really feel. And thus you have the situation with Mecha almost killing him, fatally, almost nearly killing him when he goes back into the line of battle, blah blah blah. And thus all that, and then to top that all off, you have Sally watching it on a screen back in Knothole. And to top it all off, you have 134. And to really emphasize how bad mentally, how bad from a story standpoint, how mentally bad off Sally was. You have Max mention to Alicia, "Oh, Dr. Quack says she's fine." Yeah, you're gonna believe someone named Dr. Quack that after all this time she's mentally fine now to take over a kingdom? She didn't even temporarily run the kingdom while you're gone. And at the same time, she now has her boyfriend back, her fiance back. Yeah, Sally's unexpected Sure, Sally may have unexpectedly didn't see that coming, but accepted it. And at the same time, she accepted it because she saw maybe a golden opportunity to get Sonic out of the line of duty. Because she didn't want him to get hurt again. And it's the same thing in real life. Let's say a police officer, he gets hurt badly to the point that after, people don't know if he's going to make it. And when he does, by the grace of God, when he or she does, or mostly he, and I'm not trying to be, rude, I'm not trying to be rude or anything, or offensive. But normally when that police officer, he or she gets back, starts healing by the grace of God, starts to heal, and rehabilitate themselves to the point that after all the rehabilitation and healing, they're ready to get back into that line of duty. There's going to be those, if you're a male police officer, a wife, or a girlfriend, a fiance, a mother, if you're a female police officer, possibly a husband, probably a mother, or probably a grandmother, that are going to be reluctant for you to go back. They're going to do everything they can to say, no, don't go back. It's going to happen again. And this time, don't go back into that line of duty. Don't go back into the line of fire, because if it happens again, it may be fatal. And from a realistic standpoint, you take a look at what Vorahk's talking about with Sally, and that's basically what she wants. She's basically trying to tell Sonic in the storyline in issue 134, look, I don't want you to get hurt again. I don't want you to possibly die this time going back in the line of battle. And she goes on to explain that they have all these new resources at that time. At the time of that issue, that they have all of these resources. And that he doesn't need to risk his life. But, just like in real life, Sonic declined to sit on the sidelines. Because just like in real life, Sonic declined to sit on the sidelines. Because there are people that are dedicated to their duty as a police officer or a soldier that are willing, after rehabilitation and all that, to go back into the line of duty. They are. They're willing to go back into the line of duty. They are. Now I know you say, well, there are some people who go to war and they lose legs and yeah, I understand that, and those are the exceptions. Those are the exceptions. Those that lose a leg or an arm, they're the exception. But guess what? You know as well as I do, in their heart, they still want to defend their country. They still want to defend their country, and if they could, they would do whatever it took to get back in the line of duty themselves. And I'm not trying to be mean or offensive by saying that, because I think anybody watching this knows that's true. The fact is, what Vorahk295's pointing out here from a realistic standpoint is basically with everything that's happened to her mentally beforehand, and now with this, and now coupled with the fact that she's going to be left temporarily in charge of the kingdom when her parents are away, and the fact that her fiance, the person that she doesn't want back in the line of duty, the person she thought was dead for a year, Mobius time, still wants to go and battle when he almost nearly got injured or hurt again. With all that on someone's mind, of course it's going to cause them to have a mental meltdown. It's going to cause them to break down. It's going to cause them to act out irrationally and say things and do things they don't mean. And whether you like Carl Bowlers or not, and believe me, there's a lot of people that have criticized his work on the comic from a story standpoint, even though the breakup and the slap was over the top, from a realistic standpoint, you can basically understand why it happened. And that's what Vorahk's basically pointing out in this journal, and again, I will provide the link. You know, because one of the things he points out is Sonic doesn't tell Sally, let me think about it. Give me a moment or so to think about it. Give me some time. No, he just flat out says, no, I can't. No, I can't do that. Now, for anybody that defends Carl bowlers, they might say, well, Carl is trying to keep Sonic to stay true to his Sega self. In other words, Sonic originally by Sega would rather be out fighting instead of sitting about. I mean, heck, if you watch Sonic X, there's a good example right there. He just can't stand still. He's got to keep running about. Whee! And you know, whether you whether you like Carl Bowlers and how he wrote this issue or you don't, whether you like how he writes stories or you don't, basically credit does have to be given to the fact that he basically tried to keep Sonic true to his Sega self, whether you liked it or not, by having him decline Sally, saying, no, I can't do this. I can't sit in the sidelines. I can't sit on the sidelines. I can't sit on a throne inside a castle side by side with you. Well, Dr. Eggman, Dr. Robotnik is out and about turning this planet upside down and making it miserable. You know, so again, you know, I can understand where he's coming from from a story standpoint. If I was writing the story, I agree. I would have had Sonic say, well, Sal, I understand what you're saying. I know this is kind of unexpected for you, and I understand what you want. Let me think about it for a while, and I'll get back to you. Because, one, he's not saying no. He's not saying yes. He's just saying, let me think about it. And again, you have to basically have that edict of, let's break them up. They've been together for a little bit, now let's break them up. That's that stupid edict by Sega. I mean, if you're a Sonic and Sally fan, and you support those two, right there, you support them as a couple, as a pairing. The one thing that's always going to piss you off is that damn edict by Sega that every once in a while they got to break up. Because Sonic can't be in that long-term relationship deal. Okay, fine. Fine, it's cool. I get that. But let me tell you, but here's the thing. There could have been a more down-to-earth, I mean, you want to go for a realistic, here's the thing. Carl bowlers, whether you like them or not, you know, if you wanted to go for a more realistic situation of how it was going to happen, then maybe the slap or maybe how they broke up should have been more realistic than over the top. And I think that's the one thing that distracts, that's what makes this issue so infamous in the eyes of many fans. It's not the fact that the story wasn't bad. Up to that moment, it was actually kind of heartwarming. Not heartwarming, heartwarming. It was kind of heartwarming, relaxing up until that moment. It was actually kind of a joy to read. It was. And then to have that moment happen basically ruined it for a lot of people. It ruined it for Mixed Fan 8643. It ruined it for Vorahk295. It ruined it for Louis the Hedgehog. It ruined it for any fan of the comic. And basically made Archie Comics and any writers that they would bring in, whether it was Carl Bowlers, Ken Penders, or even currently Ian Flynn, and at times Tracy Yardlin, it basically made fans suspicious of how good and how dependable and how fan-friendly these writers were, how trustworthy they could be. All because of that ending. If they wouldn't have ended the comic with such an over-the-top way of breaking them up, and more like on a realistic standpoint, like, or some better way of doing it, instead of over the top, then I can understand that. And that maybe the issue wouldn't be so infamous in the eyes of many fans. But, again, to get back to my point, I do understand where Vorahk295's coming from. You know, because when you take a look at it, after everything she went through, storyline-wise, from character-wise and stuff like that, and if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, you kind of understand how how everything just finally just caused everything that's been on her mind mentally and all that, emotionally and mentally, would cause her to have that mental meltdown. You know? And again, if it wasn't done, if the ending, the breakup wasn't done in such an over-the-top way, maybe fans wouldn't be shunning this issue or criticizing this issue. Maybe they wouldn't be criticizing Cole Bowlers or even Ken Penders because of what's happened. So, I'll provide a link down below so you guys can read it yourself. But that's just my take on it. And Vorahk295, keep up the good work. And God bless everybody. Take care. And I'll talk to y'all later.